Hello, 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 y'all. I am fortunate enough to be here today with Ges. As you guys know, if he is here, it's because he's a professional speaker and he has things of value in his head and from his experience that I want to share with you here. So, Ges, let's roll into who are you and what the heck are you doing here today?
Okay, so I'm Ges Ray, which is it's only got 6 letters in it, but it's a useful name. So my business is about building your speak performance skills, actually, whether it's TEDx or in business or even simply delivering the weekly figures to the board. My ambition in life is to get you as a speaker performing to the best of your ability, and that's the essence of everything that I do, actually.
That's beautiful, right? So, for the kinds of people that listen, the aspiring speaker, the professional speaker, or the entrepreneur who speaks to grow their business, you've got a lot of valuable knowledge. So, how did you kind of get into that? Just to start off there, because that's not you. I'm assuming you had some experience to be in a place where you can help people with those kinds of problems.
Yeah, I did a 40-year apprenticeship actually. So my background is very ordinary commercial. I'm an ex-bank manager. So back in the day, I was a bank manager, business development manager in various businesses after that. And I worked in the States, worked in Europe, worked in the UK. And then as life takes interesting turns, doesn't it? So there was a point, so 40 years later, where life took one of those turns, yet another redundancy. And someone said, Jez, what else can you do apart from trying to get a job to be a business development manager? So when I looked back, I'd had not only an apprenticeship in business, but also in speaking. I've emceed the Leith Hill Music Festival, which I'm now chairman over here in Dorking in the UK for years. So I've grown up commanding a stage with 600 people on it. I used to run
Wow.
workshops in the bank for people. So the ability to stand up and speak was something that had been part of my working life for many, many years. So when the opportunity came to turn that round and say, I've been there, I've bought the t-shirt, I've made more mistakes than you could possibly imagine. Let's now help other people to overcome those mistakes and be the best version of themselves that they can and really perform when they're speaking. So that's how it started. And 10 years later, no, 12 years later now, I haven't looked back.
So that's one thing you said there that is kind of getting me to think something that I wasn't expecting to think here. Speaking is not just for speakers. Speaking is in every industry of business because business at the end of the day is conversations between people. In what ways have you noticed speaking being useful for people that are speakers but not speakers, if that kind of makes sense? Speakers that are normal, business, they're working normal jobs, but speaking proved exceptionally valuable for them to know.
I know what you mean. Because when you say speaker, you think of, keynote speaker rocking up at a gig, at an event and taking the stage for 40 minutes. And of course, I'm part of the Professional Speaking Association in the UK, and that's part of what speaking is. But most speakers, in speech marks, are actually in business. They are delivering information to their team. They're delivering pitches to their clients. They're going to events to do a presentation about their product or their service. That's the majority of speakers in the world. And most of them are arriving at the venue wishing that they'd never got out of bed that morning, stomach churning, hands sweating, just wanting to get through it, and then wondering why some people look as if they've just got it and they've got it made and they're natural. And they forget that actually those people who look as if they just do it off the top of their heads and off the cuff have probably been working on that pitch, on that presentation for a year, 2 years, honing it, shaping, working on the voice, working on the physiology, working on the engagement techniques. And there's so many people in business who could do so much better if they just paid a bit of attention to building those skills.
And what do you think right now, because you've been in it 40 years of the apprenticeship, you said, what are the majority of speakers getting wrong?
That's a very good question. There's several sides to that. If you think that every time you speak, you're performing, even when you're on a Teams call with your group of people or a Zoom call, even you're just appearing for the 9 o'clock catch up, you are actually performing. You're on stage. I mean, here you're with me in the mythical Ovation Theatre in the village of Standing on the Stage, which is all part of a virtual paradigm. But there's the physical side of speaking, the physiology, the preparation of getting your body right, getting your voice right, of getting everything ready to perform. And then the other side of the coin, the content. I mean, how many times have you seen someone, been asked to say a few words? You go to an event or you go to a meeting and someone just says, "Oh, yeah, Fred, can you just give us a few words? Just tell us a bit about who you are." And they stumble and they splutter. Whereas if they had a little script in their back pocket that they'd rehearsed and nuanced, so that when someone said, Fred, welcome to the meeting. Could you just tell us a bit about who you are? They've got it ready to go. Not just the content, but the way they're going to deliver it, the voice tones, the smiles, the engagement. And then people in the room are going to look at them and go, whoa, they know how to do that. So I think there's two key sides. It's the physical preparation, the physiology, the getting yourself prepared, just as if you were going to go and sing a solo in a major concert. Okay, maybe not that big, but just if you're just going to go and have a sing, you warm up, wouldn't you? You get in the shower, you get in the car, you get this going. But how many people turn out to a business meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning, having only drunk a cup of coffee, grunted at cat, dog, or partner, ignored everyone on the tube, and got into the office and then expect this to just work? And it lets them down. So the preparation for speaking is the physiology, the way you present yourself, but also the content. Very much so, the content.
One speaker that I think he's done a lot of speaking globally and a lot of people know about him, he at one of his gigs was talking about this pre-speaking routine that he does every time he gets on stage, and how this routine he does, it taps into a kind of physiology he has that I guess triggers an entire data set of who he is, what he speaks on, and that kind of brings that energy. This guy is Tony Robbins. He like bats his chest. He's like, I'm in this, right? And right there, he's in that moment and he's in that peak state, ready to speak. So for the kind of what you were talking about, what pre-speech routines, however, if it's something as simple as like a tap to the chest, or is there a kind of a framework or a routine that you normally teach and work with your clients on that would be helpful for other speakers to know?
Well, everyone is different. So that phrase, tap to the chest, is a really interesting one, because if you translate that into the world of sports, for example, you see top sports people, getting ready for their match, for their game or their race, and you see them do something like that, don't they? It's a tap to the chest, or maybe it's a tap on the ear, because what it's doing for them is summarizing all the preparation that they put in over years to get to that point. And for them, that's about preparing their body ready to perform at its best for the sporting event. Mm-hmm. If you were singing, I'll major on singing because that's my amateur passion and hobby. I'm a bass voice in a choral society. So for me, singing is just the epitome of getting this all ready and prepared and ready to go. I wouldn't dream, I dream a dream, as they sing in Les Mis, but I wouldn't dream of going to get ready for a concert with my choral society without having done a full rehearsal and warm up before. This would just give up, wouldn't it? So part of the preparation is, again, everyone's going to be different. They're going to have their own way of doing things, but warming up the voice before you start speaking. So if you've got a 9 o'clock meeting with your colleagues or with your team, then at 8:30, shut yourself away somewhere, go in the loos if it's in the office and everyone's around you, and just do some voice warm-up exercises. Even a good yawn starts to stretch the voice out, and then sing a little happy song to yourself. You may think, I can't do that, but I promise you that when you do those preparations before the gig, before the event, which is your meeting, this will not let you down, and you will add a richness, a timbre to your voice that will hopefully enthrall your audience. I'll give you a tiny little thing, smiling. Now, I used to be a bank manager, so I was often speaking to my peers, which were solicitors, accountants, and I was a bit slimmer than I am now and very sharp-suited in sharp suit and tie and the way I should be as a professional. And there was this expectation that we should be severe business people because that's what we were there for, with hard faces. But of course, as soon as someone came along and gave us a grin, everybody warmed to them, because that's human engagement. That's what we do. And there's even a little thing about having a smile. When you smile, it actually changes the airflow off your soft palate and just marginally changes the timbre of your voice from the 6:30 in the morning. I've not had my coffee, I'm sucking on lemons sound into a richer, warmer, more engaging and BBC Radio 4 type voice because you've warmed it up properly. So everyone can find those little routines. I don't have a specific objective with every person that follow this and you will achieve that. It's about understanding their circumstances. What are they about to do? What frightens them? What scares them? When it's 2 minutes to go before they have to stand up and walk to the front of the room, what's going through their heads? Deal with that. Find a routine, as every sports person does and every performer does, so that when they hit their stage, they're ready to go. Then they deliver.
And for you, you obviously do this as your business, but you also are a professional speaker and get booked and paid to speak at the same time. How do you normally go about balancing the two of those, of running a business which is separate from your speaking business and your speaking business at the same time?
For me, it's all wrapped up into one, actually. There's huge debates in the speaking industry that you shouldn't speak for free, you should always get paid. But for me, if I get invited to go to an exhibition and do a half-hour session, it's marketing for me, and I'll run a mini training session for me, a mini coaching session, a mini performance session, and get people up on stage helping me. So for me, it's all wrapped up in the same thing. Whilst the essence of my business is helping people to be the best of themselves, I can't resist it when someone says, "Oh, Ges, will you come and do a session in an expo?" Because there's the performer in me that likes to get up, and there's a moment of thrill, of excitement, of joy when you walk up on stage and you hold an audience in silence for a few seconds before you actually begin. I mean, Tony Robbins he's the ultimate master of it. He's been doing it for so many years, and he knows how to command thousands of people. And it's about using performance techniques, about using silence, about using the way you stand, about using engagement and compel and haunt and obsess the audience with the content that you're going to deliver. So I've gone off the topic. How do I balance the two? It's all wrapped up in one for me. My business is who I am, and if I'm on stage speaking, it's all the same as if I'm running a workshop in a room. I'm performing in all of those as well.
And this next question I'm going to ask is kind of personal, but also very relevant to a lot of other speakers out there. So I've given a few speaking gigs now, and I noticed there's always a balance between the content of what you're saying and being in your head to make sure you're delivering what you want to deliver to the people in the audience, but also being out of your head and present with the audience and engaging with them and conversing with them as your speech as well. So for you, what does that balance normally look like? Where how much are you in it with the audience, paying attention to what's hitting, what's not working, and having the conversation with them, versus in your head making sure you deliver all the content that you came there to actually deliver?
Yeah, that is a very, very poignant point, because certainly since lockdown, the world of speaking and delivering, particularly in business, has changed dramatically. Because before, when we said, "Oh, I'm going to speak at an event," or "I've got to go and deliver something at a business function," it would always be in the room. You'd be walking into maybe simply a room with 20 people in it, or you might be going into a hall with 100 people in it. It would be in the room. And I absolutely identify with what you're saying. When you've got people in the room, you've got a structure in your head that, of course, you've rehearsed and you know inside out, but there'll be nuances going on. You'll get some feedback. You'll have chatted to people on the way in, as most speakers do, to get the feel of what's going on. And you'll have found out that Jim has done such and such, and Judy's done X, Y, and you can bring them in and you can get the nuances from the audience. So there you are living and feeding off of what's happening in the room. But the other side of today's speaking is actually this. It's virtual. It's delivering over Teams. It's delivering over Zoom. It's maybe delivering a webinar. And that, I would suggest, is completely different. Of course, you need all those fundamental skills. You need to have warmed yourself up. You need to have prepared yourself to speak. But the content, you don't know if it's landing. You haven't got any feet. You're not going to get a giggle coming back through the screen. You're not going to get any any smiles because the chances are it's a big Zoom and you can't see the faces, which means that your preparation has to be 10 times the level that you do for in the room. You've got to script it to the point where not only is it rock solid, but you know, because you're using scripting techniques, say the rule of three for humor, or other techniques where you know it's going to have a certain effect, you are going to need to script your content to the nth degree, because you're not going to get any feedback through that looking glass of a laptop. You've got to know that it's going to land. And that is about preparation, preparation, preparation. It's about using techniques such as echo, engage, compel, haunt, and obsess your audience. Engagement is but a fleeting couple of seconds. It's a bit of color. It's stimulating the amygdala. It's getting people excited. Oh, yeah. Nudity catches people dramatically, but we can't use that when we're speaking. But of course, you watch a perfume advert at Christmas time and they get pretty close to it, but it gets people's attention. Color, drama, that gets people engaged. But within a few seconds, they're going to drift off because they're going to start thinking about things like, oh, did I make a cup of coffee? Oh, I wonder where the cat's gone. Oh, someone's knocked at the door. So if you're delivering virtually, you've then got to make sure you're using techniques to compel them to stay with you, to haunt them with something emotional that's keeping them engaged. So to come back to that point, if you're in the room, yeah, you're getting the feedback, it's in your head, but you're using the room around you. Virtual, you've got to script it to the nth degree and know exactly how it's going to land. And then another point, you've got to know your audience. You can't rock up to a virtual event to ask or to discover, are they skeptics or are they believers? In other words, do they believe in who you are already, so you're going to take them to the stars, or are they skeptics, so you've got to actually give them some facts and figures and actually build that trust? You ain't going to know that on a virtual event unless you've understood the audience before you arrive, whereas in the room you get the feedback. So it's a very long answer to your question, Ryan, but there is so much preparation needed for speaking that people just don't do.
Yeah, you don't need to apologize for a long answer. I think the more valuable that what you're saying is, take however long you need to answer the question. For the speakers up there, that there's an end goal of a change or something they want the person to get from the talk. Maybe it's strategy, maybe it's tactics, maybe it's activation, maybe it's inspiration, whatever it is for them. Is there a different way to get there that is the most strategic? What do I mean when I say that? Using emotions, using storytelling, those kinds of things. What normally is the best? How do you determine how much storytelling to include in a speech versus telling someone this is what you got to do, when, let's say, you want them to go do this thing? How do you decide when to use storytelling and maybe stories that trigger an emotion to get them to remember the message of the story versus telling them the message of the story, verbatim anyways? How do you kind of normally decide that balance of storytelling, emotion to actually deliver that message?
And if we come back from that point, actually, so much in business, which is where my world mostly is, many business speakers don't actually get to that point because they're focused on, they've been given a pitch by their sales department. They've been given a set of slides they've got to use, and they've been told they've got to include certain data because that's what's needed. But you hit the point that actually stories and emotion, as human beings, we haven't survived for thousands of years on data. No one told little Jemima that the blueberry had a 26% chance of killing you, whereas the red berry was a 70. So we didn't survive on that sort of information. What we survived on was the emotion. You're right, the emotion and the story. How did it affect us? If you look at screenwriting for films, if they want to get your attention and get you on the edge of the seat, there is a process that they work through, and it starts with breathing to put the character into a difficult circumstance where they're having trouble breathing or they're underwater, and to get you emotionally and engage and involved with them. But to tell a story and to get the emotion running in your audience is, for me, the fundamental of any communication. I mean, you might be talking about a spreadsheet with data in it, but spreadsheets pivot, or so I'm told. Now, why shouldn't they pivot as they dance on the sand and actually end up in a pub having lunch with other spreadsheets? Why can't you build a daft story around something and people will remember that? How do you decide? Again, the risk is that we start to apply data and percentages to when we should do or when we should do this. My suggestion is actually rehearsal. Think of Think of comedians who are on the circuit. We're fortunate in the town that I live in, Dorking, the best town in the UK. We've got a place called the Dorking Halls, which was actually built for the Leith Hill Music Festival, of which I'm chairman. I'll just throw that in, and we perform magnificent concerts there every year. Mozart Requiem, oh, you name it, we do it. But we get London comedians who come out to us because we're a provincial theatre. We're an hour's train ride out of London, and it's a 600-seat auditorium. They can come out and test their material. And that's what they do. They try it out. I remember going to one, and he had bits of paper all over the stage, and he made it quite clear. He said, if it gets 3 laughs out of 5 on my tour, I'll include it in the big gig in a year's time. If it only gets 2, it's out. They're working, they're rehearsing, they're getting the feedback. I suggest that what we can't do is sit down and write a percentages of this is how much emotion, this is where I should introduce that. It's about playing with the story, playing with the emotion, and then go and trying it out, going and testing it and getting the feedback, see how it lands. Many, many years ago, and something that actually probably started me on this path, I was in the bank and I got roped into doing public speaking competitions. And they were 7 minutes long, and you had to be off copy, so no notes, just absolutely delivering to perfection. And the maxim we worked to for even just that 7-minute speech was a week's worth of preparation and rehearsal for every minute. So we would spend 2 months from writing the first few words, and we're in the days of typewriters here. From writing the first few words to delivering it against a clock with judges, there was rehearsal, 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 because I needed to know, how did that line land? Could I have tweaked it? Let's tweak it next time. Let's see what it does. So for me, the answer is rehearsal, testing, rehearsal, testing. Back to comedians again, when they hit the big stage, the gig that they've delivered has probably been delivered so many times, they know it inside out. They know what heartstrings they're touching. They know what emotion they're hitting. And we need to as speakers as well.
And where do you see speaking going in the context of the speaker that's first starting out, that they know they have a story, and I ask this question because I'm assuming you work with a lot of these people, but speaking is so scary. It's I think it's more feared than death by a lot of people in the world. Where do you see the industry going for people like that they have such a fear to get on stage and talk, but their message could touch and change so many lives? And it's almost as if that experience or that story was given to them to learn from it and share that message with other people, but they're scared. There's that ceiling right there. So what does the future of the industry look like for those people and getting them on the stages they need to be on to share that message that they've been given?
I'd suggest good, and there are opportunities. Let's come to that. But let's hit on the point you raised, which is so true. Yeah, there's a book, And Death Came Third, written by a colleague of mine, Andy Lapata, in the Professional Speaking Association, from a New York Times survey many years ago, where people put the fear of dying lower than the fear of speaking. I mean, it's understandable. Let's look at the physiology. Just step aside, just for a couple of seconds, and look at how this brain works. When we were living in caves thousands of years ago, when you walked outside for a bit of fresh air into the open air, you were actually putting yourself at risk, because you were potentially lunch for a passing saber-toothed tiger who'd eyed you up and was going to come and make you his lunch. Now, that doesn't happen now. If you go and speak, you do not suddenly end up being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. But the way your brain works is still rooted in our origins as the human species. So when we stand on a stage or stand up in the room on our own, the ancient part of our brain triggers all those senses. You are exposed. You are on your own. There are eyes staring at you. You are in danger. Get the hell out of here. So that's behind the fear that everyone feels. But of course, the brain also doesn't know the difference between fear and excitement. It has the same reaction. Mm-hmm. So if we can convince ourselves it's actually fun to do, then we're off. But let's answer your question. So here in the UK, for example, we've got the Professional Speaking Association, and you've got equivalent huge in the USA, the NSA. Looking at the PSA, it's open to all levels of speaker. Yeah, of course, there'll be keynote speakers who travel the world, but actually not many of them, most people are exactly the bracket that you're talking about. They're just starting to speak. So they join something like the Professional Speaking Association, go to local meetings, meet weird and wonderful characters, but all have the same mindset. We all want to speak. We either love it or we want to love it, and get the chance to do showcases, a 10-minute presentation in such a supportive atmosphere. They'll get constructive feedback, but everyone in that room is urging them, willing them to succeed, to perform to the best of their ability and be the best version of themselves that they possibly can. Unlike the bear pit of business, where you speak in a meeting and you know that someone who wants your job is just looking to diss you because you've not done very well. But if you can get involved in an organization such as that, Toastmasters is another one, although it's more focused on learning to speak. Get involved in a local speaking organization that welcomes new and nervous speakers, supports them, and gives them the opportunity to start small, to do a little 10-minute speech and have a go at it. And even if you stumble and fall over, I cringe at some of the things I used to do when I first started getting involved in speaking and speaking competitions. But you then build up the confidence. And then something, I think there's a point at which your brain just goes, do you know, I really enjoyed that. I can't wait for the next one. And you come off stage or you leave, you go back to your chair thinking, okay, I didn't nail that as well as I wanted to, but let me get the next one under my belt. I really want to do it. Or back to that magic moment. I used to MC what was called the Youth Day of our Leith Hill Music Festival. It doesn't run at the moment because COVID knocked it all out. But you imagine a conference hall, 600 seats, packed to the gunnels with parents, with youngsters, with teachers. It's a gaggle, it's a cacophony of sound. And the trick was not to walk straight to the mic and go, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me at the back? But actually to take a slow, circuitous walk to the mic, fill the stage with your presence, and just walk up there and just hold the room in silence and just look at a few faces, the occasional to a few people. And it never failed. Within 10 seconds, 600 people would go to pin drop silence. And that is one of the most magic moments of the world. You've got them in your hand and then you begin. And that's so to get to that from I really can't bear the thought of speaking is a journey that needs to be part of an organization that will support you. So if you're in the UK or plenty other places around the world that have speaking associations, look them up, go and join them, even though you're probably wetting yourself when you pick up the phone. Go and join them and have a go.
There's that moment where maybe the first few gigs you do, they're awful. They're the worst you'll ever do. But once you pass that point of, okay, I'm not that bad anymore, and you get off stage after you deliver a strong, powerful gig, and it's that feeling of like, oh, I like this drug. I like this feeling of getting off stage knowing I just helped all these people. They're all applauding. I feel like I'm connected individually with each of them. That feeling is, I think that's what keeps speakers coming back again and again and again is that kind of thing. So one speaker I was talking with on the podcast a few weeks ago now, he was talking about how he has a system for every speaking gig he goes to, whether it's paid or free, to leverage that experience to get the most value from it, really, juice it for everything he can get from it. Because the positioning on social media and for video content of seeing you speaking on stage is fantastic. It positions you as a speaker and as an authority figure in that field anyways. So I'll ask you the question, how do you leverage your speaking gigs, whether they be free or paid, to get the most value from that 45 minutes, 10 minutes, however long it is experience?
Gotcha. A key thing is not to forget the fundamentals of business, which is making use of a good CRM system, a free one to start with if necessary, because you meet so many people. You pick up because people have business cards have come back a bit, or you get some electronic contact with them, and it's so easy to walk away from events and just enjoy the moment, but then not follow up. So a key thing for me underpins all today's social media and videos is actually making sure you make contact with those people. You drop them a message, whatever your preferred medium is. It might be email, it might be one of the other platforms, but you follow up and say, good to meet you, etc. You make sure that's in your CRM so that when they contact you in 2 years' time and you get a message saying, "Hi, it's Fred here," instead of thinking, "Oh, who is Fred?" you quickly look it up. "Oh, yes, I met him at something 2 years ago." So underlying it all for me is making sure you do the business skill of staying in touch with people and making sure you've recorded who they are and where they were when you met them. Then, yes, making use of all sorts of social media. And it's a mixture. For people who are speaking at events, they will probably have someone's taken a video of them. They might have paid them to do it, or they might have simply had a mate in the audience who's taken a bit of a clip. Yep, take that, make use of it in social media, in whatever platform that you enjoy. I've got some networking contacts who are my social media promotions. So I'm fortunate, having got to where I am in what I do, that I can send them stuff and they will make use of it and go and put stuff out on my behalf, because they now know my style, they know the way I speak. But there's also other things you can do. If you look up speaking or an approximation thereof with Ges Ray on any of the major platforms, Apple, iTunes, you'll find vodcasts, podcasts, audio tales written in the style of Brothers Grimm, of a dark tales about speaking, all sorts of fun things, and focused on how so many people get it wrong. So to have a bit of fun whilst reading it or listening to it at the same time. Everyone's going to be different. Some people are going to go, so you've got to use this platform, but there are so many platforms. Where is your market? So for me personally, because I come from professional services, I'm an ex-bank manager, I was a business development manager in various organizations. For me, LinkedIn is where most of my contacts and where most of my messaging is. Yep, my social media organization makes sure I'm on Facebook, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, but I'll admit that's not my skill. Having made sure you've stayed in touch with them and recorded them, identify where your market's going to be. Who is likely to be looking for people like you? Because we all do business with people we know, like, and trust, and we do business with people like us, or we have a defined image of what is going to be that we do business with. Where are they going to be looking? And make sure that your content is there with a caveat. There is a risk that we can spend 24/7 at the laptop, on social media, which is great, but it's not enjoying life, is it? The reason we're here is because we enjoy what we do, and we enjoy what we do because we do other things as well. Singing, give me a rehearsal. A few years ago, I did actually sing on the stage at Carnegie Hall, New York, as an amateur singer, but that's another story. But we all do things in life that we should make sure we stay in touch with whatever our enjoyment is. Singing, nature, walking over the hills. Make use of all these platforms. Get all your content out there, but don't lose sight of being a person. Because at the end of the day, people will book you or get in touch with you because of who you are. They've identified with you, they like you, and it's everything that makes you as a person that they've identified with, not the fact that you've managed to create the most amazing professional TikTok video that's gone in 30 seconds.
Yeah, are you familiar with Jesse Itzler?
No.
Okay, so he's a pretty big speaker in the U.S. at least. He built a private jet company, and then he built a coconut water company, and now he's a serial entrepreneur doing a lot of cool stuff. And he came and spoke at the event I was at last week, and it was the same. His mother had passed away 3 days prior to that, and he's super successful in business, a big time speaker, like multi-six-figure speaking fee normally. And the one message that he drove through, especially for that gig, was make memories while building your empire. And that being kind of that decision of, because as a speaker, as a business owner, you always balance, I have all these stuff I need to do. This has this ROI. I have to do this. But you do that to get to a certain point where you can have and make those memories. But then you wait so long that you realize, but I missed doing that. I didn't do that because I was working on building a business to take care of me so I could do those things. But I missed all that on the way up, right? So it was super impactful for me when he spoke that. The question I've got for you is, what piece of advice do you have for the aspiring speaker, the professional speaker, or the entrepreneur that speaks to grow their business from all your, decades of experience in this world?
The one piece of advice is is to be you, actually, to be you
Mm.
and to be the best version of yourself that you possibly can. A risk for us all when we're starting out speaking is that we're surrounded by people that we admire or people who are giving us advice, either asked for or not. You know, there's always people who'll come up and tell you how good or bad it was. But we can end up in this mire of, I'm not quite sure, am I doing the right thing? And go chasing after rabbits and headlights and just not actually achieving anything. And I've done that myself. I agree. So I think it's about being yourself and understanding that it's you have a unique set of experiences. You have a unique view on life built on those experiences, and you have the ability to get that message across. So learn the techniques and the skills of speaking by joining things like the Professional Speaking Association, the NSA, but don't be bamboozled by 10 tons of advice and information, 10 steps to achieve the best speech in 30 seconds. No. Again, my personal view, if you're going to build the skills of speaking, it takes time. We live in a world where everyone wants to do things instantly. LinkedIn, social media is full of 10 steps to achieve the perfect XYZ. If you're going to be a really good speaker, you're realistically going to spend years building and honing your skills, making mistakes, having triumphs, and working your way up the ladder. But underneath all that is finding out who you are. Where is your audience? Why do people like listening to you? Why are they going to book you? Find out who you are. Build on that and build the skills around it, and just be wary of all the advice that's coming in from right, left, or center on how to build your speaking business. There is no right way. The right way is for you based on who you are.
Love it. Now, let's say I've been listening here and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, Ges has given me so much value here, but I don't want this podcast to end. Where can they find you online to keep you in their pocket going forward in life?
Fortunately, having a very a very simple name of Ges Ray, Gesray. If you Google Ges Ray, it just goes on for pages because it seems to be I'm the only one in the world. So just go and Google Ges Ray, Gesray, and you will find me, which is great. I'm always happy to chat on platforms. LinkedIn messaging is a great one. Even the phone these days. Even the phone is where one communicates. Quite a surprise to people, I think, post-lockdown, that the phone exists for more than just tapping on it, but on the phone. Those are the best places to search. And as I say, if you go on to any of the major platforms and also search for speaking or an approximation thereof with Ges Ray, there you will find amusing, helpful things that will not make you think, oh, I'm interested in what Ges does, but I don't want to talk to him. I don't want him to think that I want to do business with him. I'm just interested in more of how he works. Go and find all the audio tales based on, as I say, based on Brothers Grimm fairy tales. Find the vodcasts, find the podcasts, find the things that are fun and enjoyable. Let's have a giggle together. And then if you think that I can help the business that you're part of, then let's get in touch, whether it's in the room or so much these days, virtual as well. But back to the key point, just Google Ges Ray, Gesray, and you'll find me.
Easy. Love it. Well, guys, if you're listening here and you found value from what Ges Ray has been telling you here, and you have a friend in mind that maybe when you're listening, you thought, oh, well, that person would find this really valuable. I think they've been telling me they are struggling with this. Well, that's a possible solution for them. Go ahead and send this episode over from wherever you're listening to this. And hopefully they can get the value that you did from being patient and listening to Ges Ray here. Guys, thank you for listening here. Talk to you soon. Cheers, y'all.